Hello, and this is Emily Wright, Tech Editor and Head of Special Projects at Estates Gazette, based here in London. And I'm joined today by Sanish Kashav, Chief Technology Officer of Prologis. How are you? Lovely to see you today.
Good to see you, Emily. And yes, I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good, great. Well, we'll take that. That's brilliant news.
It is.
The role at Prologis is a role that you took on just over 2 years ago now. May 2018 you joined after roles at Experian and Safeway and American Express, and it was a newly created role, so there's been a lot to do, I'm sure, and it has been an extraordinary past few months, as we all know. So I'm interested to find out a bit about the role pre-pandemic and then a bit about how you're responding to the role now. But the first question I want to ask, and it's the first question I ask anybody I speak to at the moment, is how are you and how are you finding things and how has lockdown been? And I understand you are you're just within the Bay Area or just outside?
That's right. I'm about 40 miles east of San Francisco. I used to work out of our headquarters in the city, having been there in 4 months, like everyone else. The pandemic has challenged us in some unique ways, but also the hard work that we've done before the pandemic has come in handy. So for instance, we were at Prologis pretty much 100% video conferencing company, in the sense that every meeting was a video conference. We have employees around the world, and so the interaction we had ensured was based on having that, seeing each other while talking. So each of our conference rooms around the world was equipped with video conferencing equipment, and of course folks could still use their laptops and monitors to talk to each other. And so when the pandemic struck and we were forced to go to this 100% remote work overnight, it was a little bit of a smoother transition because we had folks, the only difference really was that everyone was calling in from their home, so the number of video participants went up. The number of video meetings more or less stayed the same, a slight blip up, but not too much. So that was one part of it that went smooth. The face-to-face interaction is still missed. I'm sure you've seen tons of research on how video conferencing meetings, even as you're looking at each other through these cameras, is not quite the same as sitting across a table from each other and having a conversation. We missed some of that, but we're holding up okay.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Glad to hear you're holding up okay. And as I say, very delighted to hear that you're doing great, because we're sort of talking to a lot of people, and I've been talking to a lot of people, and it's really encouraging to hear that things are going well, and it sort of feels like people are sort of getting into a bit of a stride now, but at the same time maybe beginning to really get a bit fatigued of that lack of human interaction. So fingers crossed that things will continue on the right path on that front. Now, one thing that I wanted to talk to you about before we get into kind of the details of the tech side of things and the real estate side of things and logistics side of things, is about you and your approach to your commute when you first joined the company. Now, I know all about this, and I read about it, and I thought, well, that's brilliant, because not only does it give me an insight into you, and I've explained to our viewers in a minute, but I actually think it's a really interesting approach that could be potentially very useful now as everybody is looking at how they manage their commutes and how they manage the return to work. So you're obviously a very data-driven person, and I understand that you, the first few weeks at Prologis, you meticulously recorded your start times, end times, durations, of your commute. Can you explain why you did that and what the result was and how that could be useful now?
Yeah, no, it's all about optimization. Yeah, think of it as an industrial engineering sort of work study. So when I first started with Prologis, I was realizing that I was spending about an hour, 45 minutes or so from door to door, and with the commute, when the individual components of the commute, including my drive to the train station, the time spent on the train itself, the walk from the train station to work and back shouldn't have taken that long. So there was a lot of wait time, lost efficiency, if you will, in the process I was following. And so what helped me with that data gathering exercise was just really getting to cut out some of that inefficiency. So monitoring exactly what time I needed to start from home so I get to the train station just as a train pulls up, including the time taken for parking, measured how much time it takes to park. Um, if I walked from the car to the train platform, how much time does that take? So you just break down the process into its individual components, measure it, and it helped me bring down that commute to an hour and 5 minutes door to door, um, with all the inefficiencies removed. Of course, life always throws curveballs at you. So if you have a slow running train one day, you're stuck. But it's a good approach, I think, to problem solving, regardless, even in a corporate setting or in our own lives, to just take what we do and figure out an optimization path to it. So that's what I did. I'm surprised you still remember it. It's been a while.
No, I mean, I think I can envisage people sort of, taking notes, thinking, "Oh, that's perfect. How can I apply that to every aspect of my life?" And I joke, but I do think that at a time now when things like the commute to work and staggering and optimizing that journey, and where people are potentially going to be doing fewer hours in the office to avoid rush hour and peak times, being able to shave that time off something like a commute just by looking at the inefficiencies is actually a very interesting approach.
I
So
think
really
so.
useful to hear about it from that sense, but also, as I said, it gives a bit of an insight into you. And I'm not surprised, having heard that how well known you are for coming into companies and being able to identify problems and find solutions. So what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about sort of the trajectory as you see it of the sector that you've come into. I mean, it's just over 2 years now. And then I want to talk about your role specifically. So in terms of the trajectory itself, how are you seeing the sector, industrial and logistics sector, going pre-pandemic? What did you notice when you first came into the role? And then how are you seeing that shift now as we move into what is a very different time?
Yeah. So a little background on Prologis, yeah, so you understand where we play. So we own and operate warehouses, industrial warehouses, usually that serve as a last mile fulfillment center for e-commerce and retailers across the globe. The location of our properties mean that they are in urban population centers around the world, that are prime consumption centers. So we play more on the consumption end of the supply chain in that sense. And our CEO Hamid likes to talk about this, that the consumer behavior with e-commerce and the expectation of same day delivery, 2-day delivery has been something that's been years in the making now and is probably an irreversible behavior. It doesn't matter that there's a pandemic going on, consumers still expect the package to arrive the next day or within 2 days. And so that has meant that, if anything, there's an increased demand for industrial warehousing space that we provide. Some companies have had to jump on the e-commerce bandwagon in a hurry that hadn't really invested too much in it because their storefronts have closed as a result of the pandemic. And then established companies that were already doing this well have seen increased demand as well. So from an overall standpoint, pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, we've seen some parts of our customer base experiencing increased demand, and therefore us, we also are seeing an increased demand for space. There are some industries like the events industries, that travel and hospitality, that have been hit hard, and there are customers too. So It's a little bit of a mixed bag, but overall, because we are so uh, central to the e-commerce paradigm, we've seen increased demand.
Mm. I mean, yeah, and I would have expected that to be the case, and uh, presumably, I mean, and I'm assuming, but I think I can assume safely, that the better the technology and the tech, and the better the data, the more effective the process and the sector as well. So I want to talk about what you had in your mind when you joined the company and how you've implemented that, and then whether that's changed as a result of what's happened now, whether it's just ramped up, or ramped up in some cases and sort of pared back in others.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Yeah, because this is my first real estate gig. Um, I've been in financial services prior to this, have worked for retail, Safeway, Albertsons. So this is the first time I'm in real estate, and I didn't know the first thing about industrial warehousing and how it works coming in. Still have a lot to learn. But I think part of the reason that I was brought into Prologis was that Prologis has been on this digital transformation journey even before I came in, probably going back now about 3 years. And a big part of it has to do with figuring out ways to monetize the tremendous impact we have on the world's economy. So this may not be a very well-known fact, but a study found that Prologis itself, and in today's terms, has about 2.5% of the world's GDP flowing through our warehouses, um, and and that is an astounding number. And we've sensed an opportunity where we could take that scale and monetize it, whether it's through additional products and services we could offer our customers leveraging that scale, whether it's through the data that we could collect from our properties and help run more efficient operations for our customers. All of that combined was the goal that led to me coming in. There was also one big shift as I came in. I report to our CEO, and there's a big message that sends to the company overall about the importance of technology and how technology very much has a seat at the table. So over the last couple of years, we've been approaching this digital transformation in a couple of important ways. There's definitely the a big focus area of running our own internal operations more efficiently. And this means taking processes, deconstructing them, and trying to put them back together. Kind of reminds you of what I did with my commute, putting them back together in a more efficient way, introducing heavy levels of automation. So, for instance, you take something that is central to our business, like our leasing process, figuring out how many different uh, employees around the company are involved in that process, how much manual handholding of the process is present, how many different systems are involved, and then re-engineering the mix of that process and systems to come up with a more efficient way to do it, where there are fewer hands in the pie, so to speak, and automation for the most part cuts out most of that need for manual hand holding. What that leads to is that we have freed up time, which in many ways is the most precious asset we all have. And it allows our frontline employees, for instance, to spend that time with our customers. So that is a dual win in that we are becoming more customer centric even as we run a more efficient operation for ourselves. So there's that internal focus for sure. But increasingly, what we're doing is a lot of digital work with our customers. So, for instance, we recently launched Prologis Essentials, which is a digital marketplace where we provide additional products and services to our customers. And it can be everything from the basic kind of services that you would expect every single industrial real estate customer to have, like the pest control janitorial, to more advanced automation and energy solutions that that we can provide for our customers. So that's been a very interesting journey. There's also been a lot of work around getting customer feedback. We have the industry leading NPS scores right now, and we've been putting a concerted effort on making sure that our customers stay happy with the service we provide. We're measuring it, we're holding our folks accountable for it. And all of this is based on that fundamental paradigm of becoming data driven in how we manage our business and run our business. So that's been an interesting transformation journey. By no means is it done. We're probably in the first inning still. There's a long ways to go, but it's one of those journeys that never ends anyway. With the pace of technology changing the way it is, we'll continually be optimizing what we do.
And from your perspective, as somebody who, as you say, this is your first real estate gig, so as somebody who came in from other sectors, how have you found Prologis specifically, and the real estate sector more widely, at, you know, sort of getting on board with the changes that are required and the solutions that are required? And I know that you mentioned, and you know, I knew this as well, because we've been following the path that Prologis has been very forward thinking when it comes to wanting to really work very hard at that digital transformation. But you know, it's a process. So I'm interested to see how you found it when you first arrived, and how you found it since.
Yeah, I think first speaking about Prologis itself, I feel Prologis is a very technology-wise, progressive company, always willing to adopt new technology. Here's a simple example, Emily. When I came in to the company, we were almost there with our cloud transformation. So that started under predates me, and kudos to the folks who ran it. By the time I got in, the cloud transformation was already done. We didn't have large data centers that most companies have to deal with. So when you think about the basics of what it takes to get on a big transformation journey like the one we are on, those are the things usually that you get bogged down in. And so the foundation was already set, and that's something that you can't say truly of even large companies outside of the sector. So, and that goes to say about the fact that Prologis as a company has always been more on the bleeding edge of technology and innovativeness, and there is a um, there's a desire to change, and there's a desire to adapt at all levels in the company. Starts from the top, but it reflects itself in every level within the company. The real estate industry overall, I couldn't say the same of it. We're probably somewhere in the middle of the pack when it comes to technology adoption and progressive technology adoption, but it is changing in a hurry. The number of prop tech companies that have come up and the amount of investment that's going into technology startups around property management and real estate has just skyrocketed in the last few years. And it's almost every day I talk to some startup that has just come up with something really new and innovative in our space, and that bodes well for us. Um, and I I feel like we will see some consolidation, especially coming out of the pandemic, and there are going to be some big winners coming out. I mean, when you look at past recessions and past slowdowns, those are great opportunities for innovation, and we've seen some big names. I think coming out of the 2008 recession, for instance, we had the likes of Venmo, um, Make It Smart coming out of that. So I don't see this being different. I think the prop tech scene looks promising, and it will lead to some consolidation and some big winners coming out of it.
And that is, as you say, very encouraging, and it is a trend that in, you know, times of adversity, opportunity, you know, often shines through, and innovation certainly shines through as well. How do you? I mean, you're obviously a seasoned expert when it comes to this kind of thing. Your past roles, a testament to that. How do you cut through the noise? I mean, that's an interesting one. There's, as you say, a new innovative idea a day, and I'm sure there are more than that, of course. But how do you know when you are sort of coming across somebody who has really found or thought through a problem that the industry has and is actually looking to effectively solve it?
Well, for the most fundamental filter I use is the Venn diagram of problem statements, if you will. So think of because all these ideas look promising on the surface. So the way that I look at it is that I have a pretty good understanding of what we are trying to solve for ourselves, our problem statement. And so then it becomes an overlap of, is the solution that I'm looking at also trying to solve some part of that problem statement? It's very rare that it's a one-to-one fit and a perfect fit, but I'm looking for overlaps. Having said that, the next step would be, of course, looking at the technology match, and I try to stay away from proprietary technologies, look for more open solutions, um, solutions that can integrate into the larger Prologis ecosystem would be a critical component of that evaluation. But at the end of the day, it also comes down to, is this a company that you can work with? Are the values aligned? Is the way that we think of the world aligned in a way where it makes sense? And technology is certainly part of that, but it goes a little beyond that. So yeah, it's not easy. It gets increasingly harder because there's so much innovation going on and there's so many good ideas coming through.
Thank you very much for that. I mean, I'm sure there'll be lots of people watching this who will find that incredibly useful, if not gold dust-esque information from you there. So thank you very much. We've spoken about Prologis, and then we've spoken about the wider industry, and I'm sort of interested to get your thoughts on. I mean, I'm sorry, this is a bit of a crystal ball question, really, but what you think we're going to see in the next few months. I think that this sector particularly was so interesting before the pandemic. It has, as you say, it's been coming for so long now. This is undebatable requirement and growth. What do you think is going to happen when things sort of start to hopefully return to a semblance of normality?
No, that's a great question, Emily. And our research team is always thinking about this, what's around the bend, and has put out some really interesting white papers that I encourage everyone to read. They're up on our website. But the couple of key things that would influence how our industry plays out in the next few months and years. I think there was a big focus on efficiency of supply chains over the last several years, just-in-time inventory, and making sure that you have low-cost manufacturing and the like. I think the one big trend for sure that you will see, and you're already beginning to see, is that there will be a shift away um, from that efficiency to more of an emphasis on resiliency of the supply chain. That might mean more inventory carrying operations. Near shore may become more important than truly offshore. And that is all bodes well, by the way, for our business and industrial real estate in general, but that's definitely a trend that's going to happen. The second is on the labor front, and this definitely affects technology as well. I think um, the habits that have been learned over the last 4 months in terms of adoption of technology and remote work are not going away easily. And folks who've learned that are not going to unlearn it. And that means possibly a very different structure when it comes to how offices are set up, how many offices are set up, where people are hired. I, for instance, at Prologis, we've been hiring technologists from all over the world, even pre-pandemic. I firmly believe in the mantra, especially when the job market was as hard as it was, that you go to where the talent is and you don't expect the talent to come to you. So we have employees in our IT team spread across the world. That trend is going to get accelerated post-pandemic. So the I, I'm sure that there will be a increased need for um, the ability to collaborate across geographical boundaries. And so collaboration tools within IT, I can see becoming a huge part of the digital transformation of companies. Usually you're looking at internal operations and you're looking at how you interact with customers. But the employee experience is going to fundamentally change because it probably will involve a lot of digital interaction that replaces physical interaction from before. So those are some trends that I see happening.
Thank you very much. We've got a few minutes left, and I wanted to talk to you about your, well, I think it was last year, your win as Bay Area CIO of the Year in the global category. So many congratulations for that.
Thank you.
What is particularly interesting is that you were the only global finalist who did not represent a technology-based company. And I just wonder what you think this means in terms of the power that real estate companies have to really not just kickstart their digital tech strategies or continue them in a way which is very beneficial and kind of crucial actually to them, and that with the right person on board, in this case the sky's the limit, or at least nearly the limit. But also the fact that there's this external recognition of that, as is demonstrated by that award that you won. And I think that's really encouraging. That not only is it, so clear just how much impact these strategies and digital transformation approaches can have, but that it is being recognized in that an award like this, the only finalist not from a technology company or technology-based company was the winner.
No, that was very gratifying to get that award on behalf of the IT team here. And it underscores what you just said, that in the as much as a hotbed Silicon Valley is for technology firms, applied technology still wins when you're trying to use technology to solve real world problems, and you have a company that is willing to embrace it, it stands out. So this is a huge recognition for Prologis overall that we made the list and we actually won the award. I think it just underscores the fact that we should continue to use technology to solve real world problems like we have been at Prologis.
Now, I always sort of ask people for their final thoughts. You've just delivered such a perfect line there, finishing off that question, which is such a neat final thought. But I will still ask you, because it's always good to kind of just get that sort of tying everything up at the end. If you were going to leave the audience today with one final thought and message, either reiterating something you've already said that you think is really important, or bringing up something that we haven't yet covered, what message would you leave people with today?
Well, we're in a world that is changing by the day. The only way you can thrive in a constantly changing environment like the one we are in is by iterating. There is no crystal ball, going back to your question from earlier. All you can hope to is to zigzag around the mean to get to the destination. And to zigzag around a mean means being able to pivot quickly and continually iterate. So that would be my message. Don't try to boil the ocean with any particular solution. Always start iterating.
Well, I'm glad I asked, because it was a great sort of closure to the previous question, but that final thought was perfect, and very, very wise words there indeed. So, Sanish, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks, Emily. Great to be here.